Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Commute Talk. We got a sunny morning today, so that's nice. We'll see how it goes. And today, someone named Idiot is asking if I can talk about what my life in the US was like. And you chose that name, not me, so thank you, Idiot, for asking the question. So, when I was in the US, I lived in San Francisco in a part of town that the real estate people called Lower Nob Hill. And in reality, it's more like the upper edge of the Tenderloin district, which is a notoriously terrible part of San Francisco. And I was a little bit ignorant about that when I moved in, and I quickly became aware of just how bad it is. But I had some kind of action paralysis about the whole thing and did not move. And in retrospect, I don't know why, but it doesn't matter now. So my routine, the everyday routine, was waking up at maybe 8:30, something like that, and eating some breakfast, usually some like Greek yogurt or something like that with cereal, and then getting dressed and walking out to Van Ness, which is where I got on the Apple Commute bus. And it was like a 10-minute walk maybe. So I walked up Polk Street, going north up to one of the stops on Van Ness. And usually the bus would be pretty much on time. We had a Commute app where you could track the buses because they had GPS on them, so you could see where the bus was at any given time. And they were usually on schedule. And then I would just get on the bus and then sit on the bus. And since I'm Swedish, I would sit on the bus hoping that nobody would sit next to me. And I liked getting on at a fairly early stop because it meant that I could choose a seat and then I could put the bag next to me. And it's not that I disliked my coworkers, it's just that there's something about us Swedish people that we just want to sit alone on the bus and we don't want to stand next to anyone at the bus stop. And I remember a few times people would come up and talk to me at the bus stop, like coworkers, and I felt so awkward because in Sweden, if you've ever been here or if you're from here, you might have noticed that we like to keep our distance from each other, and I don't know, it's just a cultural thing. Anyway, so I would sit on the bus, hoping to sit alone, and it was always like we had to go through the Mission, but by the time we got out of the Mission, then there were no more stops. So if you were not sitting next to anyone by the time you had left the Mission, then you were usually home free. Although sometimes there was a stop after the Mission. I don't recall what it was called. And sometimes people would get on there, like these wild card people, and sometimes they would sit next to me. And I don't know. It was such like it was such a big part of my thought process in those mornings. Very silly. Anyway, so in theory, I could work a little bit on the bus, but usually I was so tired because I was always undersleeping, because I would stay up late every night and sort of put myself to sleep with melatonin and antihistamines, and just knock myself out as best I could so that I could get up the next day. I was always groggy because I was dosing the melatonin, and I would just always buy the strongest melatonin that they had at the pharmacy. And like in the US, they sell you way too high dose melatonin that you have no use for. Like you'll get by on a very small dose, but they still sell you a huge dose, and then you end up super groggy the next day no matter what. But because of my personality and my I'm kind of predisposition to addictive behavior, I just always went for the maximum of everything for no reason. Because it always escalated towards that. So I always felt groggy and tired in the morning, and I know that it was because of the melatonin, but I just couldn't stop doing it. I don't I don't take any of those things anymore, but it was like that. So I would sit kind of groggily in the bus until we got to Apple in Cupertino, and it took about, I don't know, 55 minutes, an hour, or something like that, if I recall correctly. And then we just go into work and sit down at my desk and work on stuff, I guess. Uh, when I was living there, it was in 2014 and 2015. Left the U.S. in the second half of 2015, and back then we were working on performance a lot, and specifically we were doing the speedometer benchmark. Had just come out. My coworker Ryosuke made it, and this was back when it was called "Do You Even Bench?" And was just scrambling all over the code base looking for ways to optimize this, so that I know Craig wanted to show it off the new benchmark at WWDC, and he wanted us to have like a really strong number compared to all the other browsers, because obviously when companies make benchmarks, this is what they do. Like, they develop the benchmark in-house and then they optimize like crazy for it, and then by the time they put out the benchmark, they're already sitting on like months of optimization work that people will now have to catch up to. And it was especially interesting because this was like started like a year or so after the Blink fork from WebKit, and the code bases had just kind of started to diverge seriously, and it was now at the point where migrating code from one to the other was no longer trivial. It wasn't just a matter of merging a patch, but you had to actually look at it and understand it to a greater extent. And so we were pretty hyped about it. And I recall we were obfuscating patches and like not mentioning performance impact of changes and stuff, because we were in this war mode where we wanted to beat the other browsers, so we were trying to keep it secret that we were working on performance. In retrospect, it was all pretty silly, but it was a fun time. And yeah, so that's what I was usually doing in the day. I'd come into work in the morning, profile some subtests of speedometer, and then look for optimization opportunities. Or if I was already working on something, I would just sit and hammer on it all day, because I had a pretty fast computer in the office, and I did not have a super fast computer at home, so it felt good to be in the office where my computer was fast and I could do this kind of stuff. Because working on WebKit is very, very painful for your computer, because even back then it took 45 minutes to compile the thing, and I often did a lot of optimization work on data structures, which ended up causing huge recompiles, right? So there was a lot of waiting around for compilations. Anyway, but I guess I'm not here to describe what my workday was like, or maybe I am, I don't know. But I was doing a lot of that at work, and every so often I would go to the fridge and grab a free soda, always looking for Coke Zero, and everyone else was looking for Coke Zero as well. So they had these fridges at Apple, which they would stock with different soda, and some Vitamin Zero and mineral water. And you could tell that everyone preferred Coke Zero, because that's the thing that would always run out first. So it became this thing where when they were, you knew, if you were like me, then you knew which day the guy would come to stock the fridge. It's on Tuesdays back then, and you were just waiting for that, and then you could go there and you could get a Coke Zero, and that was nice. But as those I don't know what happened with the soda really, because at some point they decided that there will no longer be soda, and they started changing the free snacks as well, because they used to have quite liberal free snacks. You get all kinds of snacks and lots of kinds of soda, but then they changed it up, and they, instead of having chocolate bars and bags of snacks and stuff. They switched it up to, they had these like containers full of nuts and things, and you could put them on a plate. I don't know what the thinking was. Maybe people were just hoarding the snacks, hoarding the sodas. I was certainly grabbing a lot more snacks than I needed and a lot more soda than I needed because it was available and I was told that I could take it. So if everyone acted like I did, I'm sure that it was I suppose it must have been a noticeable expense, but like at the same time, you got people coming into work and like staying late at night, and you cut their like soda and snacks and your apple. I don't know what they were thinking. They probably had their reasons, trying to keep people in check or something. Anyway, I definitely remember feeling entitled to these things. I wouldn't have felt entitled, but when we had them at some point and then they were taken away, that was a bit weird. Regardless, I'm not here to complain about having my soda and snack bar privileges reduced. So we would get lunch at 12 and we would go down to the Cafe Max cafeteria and just buy some lunch. And if we were interviewing someone that day, then we would have lunch with them sometimes. And I mean, someone always had lunch with the interviewees, but I didn't always go to that. But we try to do team lunches and on interview days. And then back to work on stuff, usually staying kind of late-ish and sitting at my computer. And then after work, I would sometimes, depending on which phase I was in, because I had two types of phases. I had the go running after work at the gym, where I would go and run on the treadmill with a coworker or by myself, or the beer after work, like blackout drunk after work life. And these phases alternated, and I don't know why I've always done that stupid shit. And in that phase, I would usually like find some coworker who was willing to go grab some drinks after work, and I had a rotation of people. So like if somebody would not feel like it, then I always had someone else to ask. So I always wanted to go drinking every day, and I tried to achieve that. And obviously, if you work at Apple, then you go to Infinite Loop 7, also known as BJ's, which is a bar and restaurant in at the edge of the parking lot at the Infinite Loop campus at Apple. And actually, I haven't been out there since they built the big donut spaceship thing, so I don't know what things are like now, but that's how things worked back then. So you would go to BJ's, aka IL7, and just drink. That's what I did, and it was stupid and weird. And I would stay pretty late at BJ's, maybe trying to grab the last bus home. I remember many times just how many more beers can I have before I have to catch the last bus home? And that was that. And then I would ride the bus home, kind of sober up a little bit, and if I got home in time to get groceries, I would sometimes stop by at Trader Joe's, which was at where was it? It's Trader Joe's on Hyde Street, I think. Stop in there, get some groceries, usually cottage cheese and candied pecan nuts. Just stuff, and then go home. Sometimes picking up some more alcohol on the way home, because I just wanted to drink more if I was already a little drunk. And then get home, hang out with my family, or try to, depending on what I had been doing after work. It was very different experience, and in retrospect, a very, very terrible experience for everyone involved. But I can't do anything about that now, you know? I can only look at it and honestly reflect on it, right? And see that that was a very destructive and unproductive way to live, and a very spiritually bankrupt life. But that was it. That was the reality of my life there. And sometimes I would also smoke weed at night, although not smoke it, but like vape, because you know it's California and everybody's vaping, right? So I was no different. And then stay up a little too late, just either working on something, like trying to profile something to work on the next day, or sometimes playing World of Warcraft, or just, I don't know, like if I was really high, maybe I would watch YouTube or play PlayStation. But all of those days just kind of blend together. And basically, I would wake up in the morning, just go to work, and then come home late, either a bit drunk or kind of really tired from running, so I had no energy to do anything productive or really anything that didn't involve sitting down when I got home. And on the weekends, I wish I could have told you that I did something more interesting, but on the weekends, it was just more of the same, except obviously I didn't go down to Cupertino, so I didn't get to go to a bar, and so there was less drinking on the weekends and more weed instead. But yeah, that was the life. And it gradually got worse all the time because I just allowed myself to sort of escalate my bad behaviors and my drug abuse behaviors and stuff. And what started out as workaholism sort of transitioned into alcoholism and drug abuse. And when I left there, then and moved to Sweden, then I got a good break from that, because all of the sources and reasons I had to engage with my addictive behaviors, they were sort of upended, and it took a while to get back into the groove and the routine of abuse again. But sure enough, it came back, because it always does. So after some time of moving home to Sweden, then I just got back to my routine. Anyways, that was the most accurate description of my life in the U.S. that I can give you. And I guess that's that. So I'm sorry for the bleak picture, but it's reality, so I can't really sugarcoat it. And thank you for asking the question, Mr. Idiot. I appreciate the chance to talk about it. And let's go and have a Wednesday. Let's make it a really good Wednesday, because the only thing holding us back from having a good Wednesday is us, and possible external factors that we don't control, but let's do what we can. See you guys next time. Bye.